Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Knights of the Round Cable, Link Cable's discussion series where we talk about pretty much anything gaming. I'm your host, Alex, and I'm joined by my brother, Jacob.
Hello.
And so today we're going to talk about something that was announced in the Nintendo Direct that took place last week. Something that we all knew was going to happen. We all predicted it about 10 times over, and Jacob, they finally did it. We have Super Nintendo games on the Nintendo Switch. How great is that?
Yeah, no, it's been really fun. I've already went through Super Mario World at least once, and
Nice.
going through Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, and I also got to play a few games that I never had the chance while growing up. One being Demon's Crest.
Mm-hmm.
It's been pretty fun so far. It's a very unique type of experience, I would say. I've seen a lot of people praise it, and was the reason why I decided to go and play it this time around. But definitely a great selection of 20 games to start off the Super Nintendo collection, and will be great to see the more games that they add moving forward.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what we want to talk about today is the games that we want to see them add on to this service. With the NES service that was there, and I mean it's still there, you can still go play the NES games. It was kind of over really quickly. I found like the hype for it kind of went away really fast, right? Like they got out like on day one you could play Mario Brothers 1, 3, Zelda. They added Metroid and Zelda 2 and all those games. But like after a while it was like, okay, we're like there's only so much you can get out of NES games, especially like when they added like I don't know, like Donkey Kong Jr. It's like okay, that game is like 5 seconds long. So Super Nintendo games have obviously a bit more meat to them, right? Like they're big adventure games. It's the next generation. It's bigger adventures, bigger stories, bigger like just gameplay elements. So there's a lot more possibility there. And like personally, I think the Super Nintendo has a better lineup than the NES. I know some people will say like it has better individual games, but the NES has a more broad lineup overall. I don't agree with that. I think the Super Nintendo has the better lineup if you were to compare them kind of side by side. But Jacob, the Super Nintendo is your favorite system, right? Like that's the one that you've always said is your absolute favorite, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, just the quality of games that were available, and and I guess we're going to talk about the games that we want to see on the SNES, and I'll start it off by saying the three games that really got me into gaming would be the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. So real quick, why didn't they not launch with one Donkey Kong game on here?
I find it very strange. I don't know why, and I mean, just even having just Donkey Kong Country, the original, would have been a great start off. But I mean, if they're planning on releasing them all together, then I'll be fine. But I mean, I would have to. I mean, this game really just needs to come out, like all three of them. It's just such amazing platformers, and I think it's especially one that if you never played before, you really need to experience. It offers a different style and a different feel of platformer in comparison to Mario. But I mean, I just find it very strange that these three games aren't on there as of yet. And I know we just we just got this service just a week ago, but just not having one Donkey Kong Country makes it strange. And I hope that they do decide to go back and eventually add all three, and I'm sure they will. But as of right now, it is a bit disappointing to see not one of these games make it to the SNES platform.
I mean, I do get that they want to keep games for later, right? Like they don't want to release every a Super Nintendo game on day one. But like I think we were talking earlier, and I was just saying like it was a bit weird that we got both Mario platformers instead of a Mario and a Donkey Kong game. I think that would have given a better representation of the Switch, or the Super Nintendo, as a platform. I mean, obviously Mario World and Yoshi's Island are very different games, but they're still Mario games. And they do share a lot of elements, whereas, like you said, the Donkey Kong Country games are completely different. They're their own beast, essentially, their own ape. And it's... I don't know. I think that's the one game I really wanted. I could have waited on Mario World 2 if I had Donkey Kong Country 1. Like, I mean, let's be honest here. We're complaining about which masterpiece we would rather be playing this exact moment. Like, these are excellent, excellent games. And that's actually like one thing I wanted to like touch on during this discussion is that it feels like the launch lineup of the SNES games that they threw onto the Switch is just top quality. Like they like, we've got Mario World, we've got Yoshi's Island, we've got A Link to the Past, which is still, some people to this day will say, is the best Zelda game ever made. It's like, it's not the biggest Zelda game, it's not the hardest Zelda game or anything like that, but it is a classic. Super Metroid might be one of the best games ever made. I'm not just saying like, because it is one of the best games on the SNES. It's one of the best Metroid games, but it might be like one of the quintessential games that you need to play in your life. Like, it is like, it could be in the top 5 games of all time easily. And then you have other things like, I know Kirby's Dream Land 3 is very well respected. Star Fox is very well respected. F-Zero is a really good racing game. Super Mario Kart, like, that's amazing. Like, these are meaty games that you're going to get a lot of time out of, and Nintendo just gave them to you. I almost said for free, but like, obviously you have to pay for the subscription service. So yeah, I think Donkey Kong Country, the trilogy, it will make it. I mean, I will all 3 make it, do you think?
Oh, I think so. And either they clump them together and they will say, not another direct, but another quick presentation of what upcoming SNES games are coming to the service, and you either put them together or you release them separately. But I think they'll eventually all come to the platform. I wouldn't have, like, again, I don't see why they would have skipped out on Donkey Kong Country 1 for, we'll say, for the initial release, but I think it would have to be coming quite soon, whether it's just in the next release window of games or, you know, on the next presentation that Nintendo does, whether it's a direct or just a video following up on what games are coming out on the Switch Online service. But yeah, I do think that they'll all 3 eventually be there, whether they all come at once or they come, we'll say, separately.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I would say it's going to be very similar to how they release games on the NES service. I know they already said that they're going to ditch them every month window, like they're just going to release them whenever they want. But the way it worked on the NES service is that you would get maybe 2 or 3 games a month. They would be a random selection. They're not associated with each other at all. And you sometimes got like a special version, which was basically just a save state of a game. Like, maybe you're like, oh, you're fully powered up in Metroid and you're about to go fight Mother Brain, like, spoiler alert. So it's I could see them doing that, whereas like, you know, you get like, hey, you're about to go fight Mother Brain, spoiler, in Super Metroid, and you're fully powered up. You have every piece of gear, which that's kind of how the SNES or the Switch is treating its retro games, is that it lets you play with them in interesting ways. Like, they do the rewind feature, which is actually helping me beat Super Ghouls and Ghosts for the first time. I'm awful at that game. But the rewind feature, there's save states, you can play with the way you progress through the game, which is really interesting. But I think that the release windows or release calendar for them was going to be very similar. I would see us maybe getting Donkey Kong Country and something else, and then like a special version of Mario World where you have like you're at the special world at the end, like right off the bat. You can play it without playing through the rest of the game, like stuff like that. So those games that there might be releasing is what we really want to talk about today, and kind of where we want to see this service go and what types of games that we want to see added to it. So Jacob and I put some lists together of our, I think I've got 3. How many do you got, Jacob, to go over?
Well, we did already talk about Donkey Kong.
So we already did your 3.
So I've already topped off with 3, but I have 2 other ones that I really do want to talk about, mostly just because they're personal games to me, but I'll pass along to you to say which other titles you want to see in the SNES here.
Cool. So the games I chose, I stuck with a theme. I chose 3 games that are not easy to play in this day and age. They're not easy to come by, whether they were region exclusive or were released in a very low quantity here in North America, where we're sitting. So I chose games that I feel like would be fun to add to the service. We already do have a Super Famicom game on there. They added Super Puyo Puyo 2, which never released in North America. It's one of the launch games. Puyo Puyo is fine. It's a fun little puzzle game. I guess the closest analogy, if you're not familiar with the Puyo Puyo brand, is that it's basically Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. It's just that is a reskin of Puyo Puyo. But yeah, it really opened up that there will be Super Famicom games on here. And over on the NES side, it has Famicom games. We got Versus Excitebike and Super Mario Bros. Lost Levels. So these games exist, and Nintendo is much more willing than they've ever been to dive into that catalog of games that have never released over here. So for my first pick, Jacob, if you've heard of this game before, I want, let me know honestly if you've heard of this. It's Mario and Wario.
No, I can't say I've already heard this game before.
Cool. So it was a Japanese exclusive, kind of a puzzle platformer. So basically, you play as a fairy that has to guide Mario. I hear you typing. Are you looking it up right now?
I am looking it up.
I did not make this up. This game exists. Where you play as a fairy, and you need to guide Mario, who has had random, a bucket dropped on his head, or different things from Wario, to the goal at the end of the level. And it played with the Super Nintendo mouse. It was a Super NES mouse game, like Mario Paint, which, I mean, obviously translating that over to a Switch controller, you'd have to figure it out how that would work. But you know what? For the sake of argument, it's not an impossible problem. They can solve this using the joystick on the Joy-Con or whatever. So yeah, it's this fun. I played it at a retro gaming convention one time, and I played it for 5 minutes, and I wanted to take this game home with me. It was so fun. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, just in kind of its aesthetics, but the gameplay is very much almost like Lemmings in a weird way, where you're sort of guiding Mario, fixing obstacles that are in his path, because he has a bucket on his head. He doesn't know where he's going, so he's just walking forward. Wario is throwing stuff at you, trying to knock Mario down or whatever. And it never released in North America, and the reason is speculated as being because the Super NES mouse kind of flopped over here. Mario Paint was very popular for a very short amount of time. It was kind of like a flash in the pan type thing, and Nintendo of America didn't really see a lot of interest in supporting the peripherals of the Super Nintendo anymore. They were moving on to big game experiences. This is around the time where Donkey Kong Country was coming out, Yoshi's Island was coming out. They were kind of releasing the final batch of big Super Nintendo games before the Nintendo 64, and so they didn't really want to focus on the little peripherals here and there, right? So it stayed in Japan. It was fully translated. That was one thing that I remember being surprised by, was that, hey, I can read this game. It's not in Japanese. I can understand it. I mean, it's you can make the story up for yourself. It's not going to be a Chrono Trigger style RPG where it's just this massive story or anything. But it's a really fun game. Not a lot of people have played it, and I feel like it's the kind of game that Nintendo couldn't get away with re-releasing it on its own these days, through a kind of an enhanced remake. It's too little for that. I think it would be perfect on the Super Nintendo app on the Switch, and it really is the kind of game that's it's weird, it's wacky, it's fun, it's just well made. They need to bring it back. I really want to play and finish Mario and Wario. Yeah, it's a fun game. It is. It's on my list. I want it.
Yeah, no, just taking a quick look at the screenshots here. It looks like a very different Mario and even Wario type of experience. So, just having that type of unique game on the Switch Online for those SNES releases is something that definitely they've shown at the beginning so far with the first 20 releases, and I think that would definitely add to that as well.
Yeah, I think like those unique experiences and those games that maybe people haven't had a lot of chances to play are what's going to sell this. Like, I don't think if Nintendo was just releasing their first party games that we've all played a million times that people would be very enthralled with the service for very long, because it's not like the virtual console on the Wii like before, where you're just buying games. Like, you're like, oh, I like Super Mario Brothers 3, I'm going to buy that. Oh, I don't like Super Mario Brothers 2, I'm not gonna buy that. In this one, it's like, no, this is the games that are on offer. You have to like them because this is what we have. And so they could go one of two ways with it, where they could just release an insane amount of games, and it's like, well, obviously I'm going to find something I like, or they pick and choose and keep the interesting ones. And from what I've seen so far, is they'd rather lean on the interesting ones rather than just releasing quantity of games. That, I mean, like with the NES, it's kind of like after a while you're just going to run out of big meaty games, but with the Super Nintendo it's a little bit different. But yeah, I think going over to the Super Famicom lineup with Mario and Wario would be a really fun way to, like, hey, there's a Mario game on here that you've probably never played before. And I think that's exciting.
No, it definitely is. However, for my next pick, I think it's more of a known quantity, I guess you like to say it. And that is with the beloved RPG, Super Mario RPG. And once again, I think it's one game that, again, needs to be added just for how different it is. It's also like a very different look on the Mario universe, which I think is why so many people associated with it back in the day and still do. But just having that great experience onto this platform would just be phenomenal.
Yeah,
we've seen how Nintendo has been able to evolve the Mario RPG type of games with the Paper Mario series, but having, we'll say, like the first like big Mario RPG style game done by essentially a third party. It's Square, right? It's not Enix. It's Square.
Square made this one. Yeah, like this was all them.
Yeah, and again, it's such a unique type of experience, but one that people still love to this day. And just seeing how many people want to play this game and to want to have Gino in Smash as well, I think that would also be great.
Hashtag Gino for Smash.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, now that they're finally, or not finally, but now that they've announced that they are adding more characters, what do you think? What are the odds? Are we getting Gino finally?
I think at one point, I would have to take Gino as being one of the bets for in Smash. I mean, he's just so popular. I mean, he's such an easy character to look and distinguish in comparison to like some other characters we have so far. And the way they've released Ridley and King K. Rool especially, I find that's those two characters are really for the fans that have been asking to have like these type of characters. And having Gino in Smash, I think, falls in line with that. I don't know if he'll be the last character announced in terms of like the first batch, but I would definitely see him being a part of the second batch. And we can always go back, and if nobody hasn't been on Link Cable recently and haven't looked at our Smash coverage, we have a lot of predictions and top 10s related on Smash Brothers. But
yeah, we're always wrong. So if we ever predict a character, then they're not coming into the game.
Yeah, but I mean, Gino, again, I think he's slowly but surely starting to be a safe bet for Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
But just going back to Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, it's just a phenomenal experience, and it's one that people, again, just keep going back to all the time. And there's been always fan requests to have we'll say like an HD version, but I think having just a port, well, it's not much of a port, but like just having this version of the game on this on the SNES service would do a service for everybody. And I think everybody should, if you haven't played Super Mario RPG, you really should, because it's an easygoing RPG, but at the same time, it's still it's still hefty enough to keep you invested from start to the end. Which again, it's a full length RPG featuring Mario and all your other favorite characters from the Mario universe.
Yeah, and Malo. Malo is no one's favorite character.
Yeah.
But you said a good point there, because Mario RPG is a great beginner's RPG. It was my first RPG. Like, speaking from experience, it was my very first RPG, and RPGs are my favorite genre nowadays. I've played tons of them, and I think with Mario RPG, it walks you through the mechanics really nicely of how turn-based battles work, how overworld exploration works, how gaining experience works. And the Super Nintendo is an RPG machine. It has a near endless lineup of amazing RPGs, and the problem is with that, though, is I don't think that many of them are going to get re-released on this service. Like for the Final Fantasy games, for example, those I think would be like, Square Enix has shown that they would rather re-release those like standalone or as remakes or enhanced remakes. I like Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is too famous. Like it sounds weird to say, because you typically want a famous game, but it's too much, I would say, to put on here. As much as I would love to see Chrono Trigger on here, I feel like that would be like, they could get away with releasing a Switch port like they did of Final Fantasy VII, like of Chrono Trigger, and I could see people putting down $10 for that game alone. Then you have something like Earthbound, which Earthbound is kind of like in this weird spot where Nintendo has been re-releasing it a lot lately. It was on the 3DS and the Wii U Virtual Console. It's been in like the Nintendo hasn't been shy about the Earthbound series, well, 1 and 2. So I could maybe see Earthbound coming one day. Maybe. Like, it's kind of in that weird spot, but like the only RPG on the service right now is Breath of Fire, which is a fine game. It's okay. It's a very old school RPG. Let's put it that way. Like, it's very like mechanically, it's slow, it's grindy, but it does the job. And I think that's kind of like that kind of set the expectation for me in terms of the RPGs we're going to get on this service, where it's going to be kind of like not the world famous mega beloved games like Final Fantasy 2 and 3 or 4 and 6, I guess technically, or Chrono Trigger, but it's going to be games like Breath of Fire and Mario RPG, where like these are standalone games in a sense where they're not tied to much else. I mean, obviously there's more Breath of Fire games, but they could, like, their Breath of Fire, the name, does not hold the same clout as Final Fantasy, the name, right? I would love to see Mario RPG. For years, I had been thinking that they were going to remaster that game, especially back when the 3DS was popular. I thought that the 3DS was perfect for a Mario RPG remaster. Instead, they just remade every single Mario and Luigi game for it, pretty much. Not Partners in Time, for some reason. But yeah, I think Mario RPG is a great choice. Like, I would absolutely be so happy that they put that one on there again. And that was a hard game to come by for a long time. Like, before it started getting re-released, like, Mario RPG was kind of becoming this like legendary thing, right? Where it was like, oh my god, like, you have a copy of Mario RPG, like, wow, that's cool. I mean, I hope it's still cool, but it's just kind of like, now it's a bit more accessible because it's been on the virtual consoles and things like that, right? So my next pick is one that I know people have been asking for this one for a long time. This is it's not as obscure as Mario and Wario, but it also is an RPG. It's an action RPG. It's Terranigma. So Terranigma is a game by Enix, pre-merger. So it's an action RPG that, in terms of its story, it was just so cool. It was really telling the story of the rebirth of the world, all the way from the start of life through to modern times, as this like time warping travel RPG. Like, it was just very deep in terms of a concept for the Super Nintendo. Like, even like it really took things beyond. So Terra Enigma only released in Japan and Europe, which is a very odd combination. Usually if a game has made it to 2 territories, it does make it over to the third, which would have been North America in this case. So what actually happened is that Enix USA, but while the game was being ported or localized, shut down. They went out of business. And so Terra Enigma remains as this Europe exclusive game, which means in Japan, but for the European version, that means it's already been translated into English. This game exists in a readable format, and for Mario and Wario, you can get by with the game being in Japanese. Like, you don't need it to be in English to understand what you need to do. With Terra Enigma, you absolutely do. It would be you would lose so much of the game if it was a foreign language you didn't understand. So people have been asking for Terra Enigma. I remember back in the Wii Virtual Console days. So when Nintendo was releasing the Wii Virtual Console games on the weekly basis, people were like, "Where's Terra Enigma? Where's Terra Enigma? Where's Terra Enigma?" Especially, and then Nintendo announced they were releasing a handful of games. They were calling them import games. They had never come over to North America. So we got Super Mario Brothers: The Lost Levels, the 8-bit version. We got Sin and Punishment, and people were like, here it is, Terra Enigma, it's happening, and it never did. And then 3DS Virtual Console came, and they were like, Super Nintendo games are coming, but that kind of petered out pretty quickly. And then Wii U, we were like, and Wii U near the end of its Virtual Console life was starting to get the really weird Nintendo games, like Earthbound Beginnings came to the Wii U Virtual Console, and all the e-reader versions of or levels for Super Mario Brothers 3 came out, and it was like, okay, now Nintendo's just throwing anything at us to try to buy games on the Wii U or buy a Wii U. But that Terra Enigma never came out, and I it feels like it's time, right? We're getting games, especially from Square Enix these days, that never came out here. We just got Seiken Densetsu 3 as part of Collection of Mana. And that game's getting a full remake. We're getting a remake of that game early next year, and Square Enix just seems like they are digging into that back catalog right now, especially on the Switch. The Switch is selling RPGs. Practically every Final Fantasy game is on there. So, quick side note, I thought this was pretty funny, and I wanted to kind of point it out. How weird is it that the Switch has all the Final Fantasy games that never came to Nintendo platforms, but none of the ones that originally came to Nintendo platforms? It doesn't have Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which were always those are the Nintendo Final Fantasies, but it has 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 2, 12. It's just that's weird to me.
Well, that's because they think we already own them all on other platforms, so on the virtual console and stuff like that too. So
they'll sell them again.
Yeah,
Square Enix is not above making a buck. And honestly, I to have a portable HD, and I'm doing quotation marks, 720p version of Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, okay, I'll buy that. Final Fantasy IV, I've always said, is my favorite Final Fantasy game. I'd buy it. I'd buy a 1080p version to play on the TV. Yeah, I'd buy that. 16-bit games look amazing on a full TV, right? And I got these games. I still have them on Game Boy Advance, and that's fine. That looks okay, but it's Game Boy Advance, right? It's not a modern system with modern functionality. I could go on a bus ride with my GBA, and people are like, "Wow, he's kicking it old school." I'm like, "Yeah, I just wish I could play this on Switch, but I can't." But yeah, so Terra Enigma, I just feel like it's time. It's been in just kind of the public consciousness as this game that is never released. You can import it. It's not hard to import it along with a European or a Japanese Super Famicom, but to have it officially available, and again, it kind of fits that bill. It's a one-off RPG. It's interesting enough that I think that's the kind of game that people will be like, oh, I'm going to hold on to my subscription if they're going to be releasing games like this. So I hope so. I do hope that they bring it over finally. It just, again, it feels right. It feels like it's time, and it's been too long. Make it happen. Like I know you're listening, Square Enix. Make it happen.
Well, for my final game of the day, it's one that I loved going back to as a kid. And while we were talking earlier before the show, you were mentioning that the Super Nintendo version, for some reason, isn't the most beloved version, which I don't know why people are saying that, but it's Raiden or Raiden Trad. Just a old school, we'll say, shmup type of experience.
Yeah, it's a vertical scrolling shooter.
Yeah, just a fun type of game that you can blast your way through with ease. You don't have to deal with a big story or anything like that. It's just, hey, I just gotta shoot a bunch of spaceships that are shooting back at me, and make sure you get your spreader, and you're good to go for a little while. And I think I think one thing that's missing from the Super Nintendo service is the lack of just those smaller type of experiences. Like, yeah, I've already beat through Super Mario World in a week, but I mean, at the same time, like, sometimes you just want a very small experience and just kick back and relax and don't have to worry about this overarching story or this 40-hour lengthy RPG. Just having, again, something very small, simple, and you can play as you please. And having Raiden, I always called it Raiden as a kid, but Raiden Trad would just be great. And I just remember looking at the box art whenever I was a kid, and I don't know, for some reason, just looking at the box itself was invigorating enough, and didn't even need to play the game. But yeah, just a simple, short type of game that doesn't take a lot out of, and I think would be a great type of experience. And if they were to add more shmups or more type of vertical shooters like Raiden Trad, it'd be great.
I don't disagree with you that the SNES had amazing shmups like that. It had amazing scrolling shooters. We already got one. We got Super Earth Defense Force, which is fine. It is okay. It is a C+ game. It passes. It's okay, but I like Raiden Trad or Raiden, whatever. I think they can do better. Like, honestly, like, it's your pick, and if it came, I would be so happy for you. But I like, give me UN Squadron. UN Squadron is just like, that is legendary. I don't know. I like Raiden Trad. I still have the cartridge. Like, I know we, like, obviously growing up we had the same games, and I still have it, kicking around somewhere. I think it's only like 4 levels. I think that's why I at least, like, I remember it, like, kind of like, oh yeah, like, it's the kind of game you can finish in 30 seconds. It's fine. It just never challenges you. I think maybe like I don't know why people have a negative opinion of the Super Nintendo version, but I feel like it's just the fact that the Raiden series is supposed to be like this, like, hardcore shooter, and the Super Nintendo version is pretty easy. Yeah, I'd be down for more games like that. I think that was the only one that, like, of that series that came to Nintendo for forever. I think Raiden 5 that just came out on the Switch is like the return to Nintendo.
Yeah. And I think the reason why I want it so badly is just, it's a title I associate as a kid as well, where I just constantly played it, and I think it's one that I just remember very, like, fondly. And I know that whenever we had the Super Nintendo, and I was much younger, and this is whenever I first started getting into gaming, and it was, again, a simpler title, but just looking back at it, maybe I associate it as it being a much larger title. Whenever you start playing games and you're looking at them for the first time, and kind of get the sense of, like, you don't have a sense of scope, right? Like, it's just the one level feels like it's everything, and I think that's why I love it so much. And again, like, I'll defend this game no matter what. If somebody were to say that it's a bad game, I will say no. The Super Nintendo version is the complete best version that you can get. But I think that's just me. Like, I know you have the copy, but I went out and bought myself a copy as well. So again, it's just a title I just love so much, and for me personally, it's just one I want to see.
Good, and that's great. Like, that's what this should be. Like, it should be a service that has games that you want to play on it. I did think of something just now. So that game has multiplayer. The Switch games that are being, like, ported have online multiplayer. That could be really interesting for games like that, where the game like has like kind of been a bit lost to time. I would say, like, where people don't really talk about it a whole lot. It doesn't have the biggest following or whatever. And all of a sudden, you're adding in a multiplayer mode that people can play over the internet. I think that is really, really cool. I saw some people on a stream playing Super Mario Kart multiplayer online, and I was like, this is the future. The future is playing old games online. But that's so cool, like, to think. And if I haven't played Ride and Trot in like a million years. I think it's like you're playing at the same time, like it's not just like one turn, right? Is it like when do you remember if like the multiplayer is you're both playing together at the exact same time on the same screen, or if it's like I die then you go?
Yeah, I would have to look it up because it's been a really long time I haven't played it. I haven't played my Super Nintendo ever since we moved into the house here, but I'll quickly take a look. But I do believe it is at the same time where you're playing both players at once.
Yeah, I just remember one plane was red and one plane was blue.
Yeah, no, and again, it's just it seems like not a forgotten series, because I mean it has had many games come over. And we've just had Raiden 5 just released, but again, it's just one of those, not to say forgotten series, but like retro series that it's just great to see come back in some way, shape, or form, and just having it on, just playing the retro games again. Playing online would also be like outstanding. But yeah, and just I'm just taking a quick look at the last releases. And it seems to be one release every generation at this point for this series. So just going back to it and just getting the chance to play it, I think would be great for many fans such as myself.
Cool. All right, so my last game is a bit unique. It's a game that I think a lot of us have played now that it's finally been released. It's Star Fox 2. So Star Fox 2. Legendary game was, as the story goes, its development was finished. Nintendo was ready. The box art was made. They were ready to ship it out to stores. And then some higher up somewhere said, "You know what? No, we're not releasing it. We're canceling it. Stop it. We're not shipping it out." The reason being, or alleged at least, was that the Super Nintendo was at the end of its life at this point. The Nintendo 64 was on its way. This was 1995, 1996. And Nintendo didn't want a older looking, didn't want to be marketing and selling 3D games on the Super Nintendo when 3D was going to be all that the 64 was about. And so obviously Star Fox 64, while not a launch game, was announced very close to the launch of the Nintendo 64. So that was another thing. They didn't want to release Star Fox 2 so close to the release of Star Fox 64. So, it was legendary. People had been searching for the ROM for years so that they could upload the game online, and I think some people did get quite a ways in. There was never a completed version, but there was a 99% completed version available to find on the internet. And then, out of the blue, Nintendo announces the Super NES Classic, and it has all these games. It looks fantastic, and then they're like, you know what? We're throwing in one more. It's Star Fox 2. We finished it, and we're releasing it. And that, first of all, that's amazing. The fact that we got a new Super Nintendo game in the 21st century from a first-party Super Nintendo game. So that's amazing. We've played it, and so the reason I say I would want it on this service is because the Super NES Classic, I don't think they make them anymore. I'm pretty sure that it had its production run. Nintendo's moved on to other things. They're making plastic rings to keep you fit now. So they've moved on to other things. And I don't think they're going to do a reissue of the Super NES or NES Classics. I think N64, Game Boy are probably coming down the road, but they've done that. It's done its time. But that would mean that Star Fox 2 is now locked on SNES Classic Island, essentially. And that it's kind of... You could only play it if you were able to get this retro console that for a while was pretty hard to get. I think the SNES was easier than the NES ever was, but it still kind of limits that game a lot. And Star Fox 2, I reviewed it for the website. It's not an amazing game. It's not a 10 out of 10. This completely changes the series in every conceivable way, shape, or form. It's a good game. I think I give it a 7 or 6 out of 10. Like, it's fine. It's a good game. But it's also not the type of game that I think should hold on to that kind of like exclusive to the SNES Classic kind of title. Like, you finished it, great, get it out there. Like, get people to play this game, especially because I think the future of the Star Fox series right now is a bit in doubt. At least for like the next like few years. Star Fox Zero was infamously bad. And then Ubisoft brought the characters back into their own IP with Starlink, and that was well received but sold very poorly. And so I think Nintendo, if history tells us anything, is that they're going to be like, you know what, we're just going to put the brakes on the series for now, and we'll come back to it when people have built up that nostalgia for it again. Star Fox 2, being a SNES game, doesn't really impact that very much, and it's a good one. It's a good game in the series. It's not like they're putting Star Fox Assault on anything or anything. I did not like Star Fox Assault, but it's a great way to sort of keep the series fairly relevant while kind of reminding people, hey, like, old Star Fox was pretty good. I mean, Star Fox 2 does have those weird like real-time strategy elements to it that love them or leave them. Like, they're there. You can't get away from them. But are they great? Nah. But I think Star Fox 2 would be a great game to put on this eventually. I think it's the kind of game where you, like, maybe in 6 months or 7 months, like, when people are like, oh, okay, like, what's going to be this? What are we getting this week? Is it going to be Warriors Woods? Star Fox 2, I would say, like, would just be a really nice game to bring over, just to get even more people into it, keep the series a bit relevant, and just kind of get it off SNES Classic Island, I would say. Just kind of break that exclusivity and have it be something that more people can enjoy. And I mean, this is an online service, right? You pay a subscription fee to have access to it. And like I said earlier, you want titles that people will say, yeah, this is worth holding on to. So yeah, Star Fox 2 is my final pick, I would say, for a SNES game. Jacob, what do you think? What do you think of Star Fox 2?
Yeah, no, well, I haven't played it because I haven't had a chance to find a SNES Classic laying around. I mean, I've seen maybe one or two where I live, and that was it. And I mean, yeah, it's a shame that Nintendo does such, like, short prints. And I mean, we say short prints, but I mean, it's just people know how to get these items whenever they come out.
Mash that F5 at 5 in the morning. Just mash that button.
Yeah, no, it's a shame that people may not have the chance to play this game, but I think it's a great way to allow other people who don't have the chance to get a SNES Classic and to experience that type of experience. And I think you're right on having it maybe maybe a premiere release at one point. But yeah, no, I would love to see it. And again, I'm a big Star Fox fan. I love most of the Star Fox games, not Zero, but no, I think it would be great to have Star Fox 2 being one of the flagship games that gets released on the SNES service. Again, I can't say that I have much to say about the game because I didn't get the chance to play it. But if it were to be one of the games that were to come out eventually, I'd be really thrilled to get the chance to play it.
Right. All right. Well, I think that's all for our official picks. But I am going to throw you a curveball. I like doing that. I think it's funny. So I'll go first to give you a chance to think about it. But dream game, a game that you think has no chance of happening on this service, but you would just if they put it on there, it's like dreams come true. So I'll give you a chance to think about it. Mine is a game that I don't think anyone owns the rights to this because there was a lawsuit about it. It's a whole story. I think Pixar was involved. It was weird, but is Uniracers. I would love for them to bring Uniracers back onto this thing. If you don't know, Uniracers is this it's kind of like a racing platforming game where you're just doing, you're a unicycle. You're not a character. There's no one like on the unicycle. It doesn't have eyeballs or anything. You're a unicycle doing like flips and tricks on these tracks. It's really really fun. It's really really great. It's really really hard to find. So I remember I had a friend back home who had a copy of the game, and it was all I wanted to play. And he was getting so sick. He's like, I play this game all the time. And he's like, can't we play like something else? Like, let's play Donkey Kong Country, or let's play like Mario World. And I was like, no, I want to play Uniracers. And I'm kicking myself because I think when he was moving away, he was like getting rid of his games. He was kind of like moving past that, like being into games. And he like offered me these things, and I was like too polite. I was like, no, we'll play them when we hang out or whatever. And like one of them was Uniracers, and I could have had a copy. So yeah, that's my dream game. It's not gonna happen. If it does, like, I don't know what I'd say. I'd eat my unicycle. But yes, that's my dream game. Jacob, what's your dream game?
I think we've already spoken about it, and it's kind of an easy pick to say as a dream game, but I think Chrono Trigger would be amazing. I doubt it's going to happen, but I mean, I'm more convinced Square Enix is going to make a full HD remaster like they're doing with Final Fantasy VII than porting it over to this SNES online service this online for SNES games. But I mean, yeah, I think that's just an amazing game, and it's one that, again, like I'm sure a lot of people have experienced it, but like, new age gamers who are kind of starting to get into these bigger releases and maybe want to like get a chance to experience what was like the pinnacle of RPGs back in the day, maybe didn't get the chance to play Chrono Trigger, and I think it'd be one that really needs to come over. I doubt it will, but I think it could. Like, definitely, it is one of those games that just is such an amazing experience, and like some people hold it as being like one of the best games of all time.
Yeah, I think it is. It definitely is, and it's one of those games it's synonymous with the Super NES. Like it came out on other systems. It came out on the PlayStation. It came out on the Nintendo DS. When it came out on the Super NES, it was like one of the defining games of that system. Like it is a seminal must-play RPG. Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that does it for our discussion on the Super NES games we would like to see Nintendo add to the Switch Online service. So thank you so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate all your support. If you like what you heard, let us know. Leave a comment. If you didn't like what you heard, let us know. Leave a comment. We'll see what we can do to make it even better. But now we'd like to throw it over to you guys. So if there are any SNES games that you want or think Nintendo should add to the service, let us know in the comments below, and we'll kind of see what the community is looking for here. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe if you'd like to stay on top of all these discussions. They happen every Saturday. And have a great rest of your day.
Take care, guys.